I don't actually buy that President Marcos is trying to balance ties with the U.S. and China. I think Marcos has been exceedingly clear since the day he entered office, most recently with Secretary Austin's visit, and before that in his Davos speech, that he views the U.S. as essential to Philippine security. He wants to maintain as stable and positive relations with China as possible, but he clearly does not view that as very likely, nor does he give that the same weight as he does his relationship with the U.S. or Japan, which I think explains a lot about this longer term process of deepening the U.S. Philippine alliance, of which this new EDCA expansion is a big step, but it's just one step in a longer process.
Nevertheless, though, I mean, it might be seen also by Beijing as President Marcos Jr. welcoming more military presence from countries that they're not very friendly with, for lack of a better term. How tricky is this going to be, especially not just for the Philippines, but for a Southeast Asia, for an ASEAN bloc that is being heralded by President Biden as being central to this Indo-Pacific strategy that his administration is trying to develop even further?
It is difficult for every Southeast Asian party and really all of China's neighbors to try to balance what they want in terms of positive economic and diplomatic relations with Beijing, with the steps that all of them, or at least most of them, are taking to bolster their own national security and deepen relations with other parties to push back on Chinese bad behavior. Let's not rob China of its agency here. This EDCA expansion is a direct result of China's continuing violations of Philippine sovereignty, Philippine sovereign rights. If China would stop trying to starve out Filipino Marines on the Sierra Madre, stop harassing Filipino fishers and oil and gas drilling, there wouldn't be any EDCA. There wouldn't be any U.S. expansion. So this is a Philippine reaction to Chinese bad behavior over a decade or more now.
Greg, let's drill down to exactly where the bases are, where U.S. forces are being allowed access in the Philippines. They're not saying, neither side is saying, but we can probably hazard a pretty good guess, right? It's probably going to be the parts of the Philippines which are closest to Taiwan. Yes or no from you on that. And also, are we in a situation where getting access back to, let's say, Subic, meaning Subic Bay, geographically, would that be advantageous, or in this day and age, no?
Yes to both. I don't have any special knowledge here about where the four sites are. We've all seen, I'm sure, the same press guesses. And you're right, there'd be obvious reasons for the Americans to want one site, maybe two, up in northern Luzon around Olongapo, because you're only 200 miles from Taiwan. There's obvious benefits in a potential Taiwan crisis on pre-positioning equipment and intelligence collection and the like. But I would think that's only one or two out of the total of 9 bases. The others, we're likely to see some Navy bases included here. So Subic is one option, Oyster Bay and Palawan's another. The original 5 sites, 4 of them are Air Force. There's no Navy bases in the original site. So obviously that's a gap that they would want to fill. On Subic, one point, I mean, it would be valuable, but let's remember the Subic that exists today is not the Subic of 1991. Subic is a commercial port now. The tiny section of the former Hanjin shipyard that the Philippine Navy now controls is pretty small. It's going to be a pretty small footprint.